Welcome back, everybody. This Week in America, website thisweekinamerica.us. Thank you for joining us on the program today. U.S. troops and military invasions have shaped our world in surprising ways. That, according to military historian Christopher Kelly, author and guest on our program today. He's documented American invasions, great and small, and their effects. The book he's co-written is called America Invades, How We've Invaded or Been Militarily Involved with Almost Every Country on Earth. Christopher Kelly, our guest. He's the son of a career in war veteran, descendant of Stephen Van Rensselaer, the leader of a disastrous invasion of Canada during the War of 1812. He's a past chairman of the Chiron Corporation, now Chiron Hego, and the former director of Kelly Television Company, Kelly Broadcasting. His co-author, Stuart Laycock, is a British historian and author. Laycock is author of the book All the Countries We've Invaded, which covers British military history. The book is America Invades. Christopher Kelly, our guest on the program. Chris, welcome to the show. It's great to have you with us.
Rick, great to be with you today.
Love the book. This is so fascinating. And the book is called America Invades, How We've Invaded or Been Militarily Involved with Almost Every Country on Earth. And I never would have guessed how many countries we've been involved with. Talk about that, because we're up to, about 43% of the countries in the world now we've invaded.
Sure. With this recent involvement in Syria, we have actually amended the book slightly for the ebook to 85 countries that we have invaded, which represents 44% of all the United Nations listed countries on Earth. And we've been militarily involved with almost all of the rest. Out of the 194, there are only 3 that we've missed completely, and those 3 are Andorra, Bhutan, and Liechtenstein.
The book is called America Invades. The website is americainvades.com. And I'd just like to talk a little bit about your background, your interest in history. It started with your grandmother, who really got you interested in history, especially looking back at military history.
Yes, she definitely did. I have had a lifelong passion for history and specifically military history, and she was aware of our family connections to historical invasions. I've had 2 different ancestors who were involved with invasions of Canada, one in 1776 during the American Revolution, and another one, Stephen Van Rensselaer, who was in charge of the New York militia during the War of 1812.
And it's interesting because you read the book, All the Countries We've Invaded, by Stuart Laycock, who happens to be your co-author on this. And what you were fascinated by the book, and you met him, you became friends and co-authors of this book. So this was really, it was sort of like meeting your idol when you had a chance to sit down and meet Stuart for the first time.
Well, that's right. I mean, the genesis of the book was, a conversation between a father and a son. And it was between Stu and his teenage son. And his son asked him, Dad, how many countries has our country, meaning Britain, invaded? And Stu, as a historian, a Cambridge-trained historian, who has written extensively about Roman Britain, was intrigued by that question, and he set out to answer it, and that's what he did in All the Countries We've Invaded. That book came out in 2012. I read it, I reviewed the book, sent a copy to him. He and I met. We both live in London, and we became friends, and my question to him as an American was, well, you've answered this about Britain, and America doesn't have quite as much history as Britain, but we've been catching up in the invasion category, so to speak. So what would be the answer for America to asking the same questions? And that really is the essence of what our book is about.
Were you surprised at the number of military invasions, incursions, when you got to doing the research?
I was. There were a number of things that really surprised me. I thought I was familiar with a good deal of American military history. I found out, that there were large gaps in my knowledge and things that I had no idea about, and have been quite astonished to learn about. Things like the American invasion of Russia in 1918 and 19, when the Polar Bear Division was sent in, mostly troops from Michigan going into northern Russia. Also, American troops went into Vladivostok and eastern Russia as well at that time. And so you have connections with America and the world that I had been only vaguely aware about, of which now I was able to learn a lot more about.
Christopher Kelly, our guest on This Week in America, co-author of the book America Invades. The book is available all across the country. Information available at americainvades.com. And it's something I want to point out that what a percentage of the proceeds will go to military charities. And you're saying as you're doing the book, you're always thoughtful of the families. Every soldier has a family, and they have stories, and they have needs, and a portion is going to military charities, as I understand.
That's right. I mean, we tried to write a vet-friendly book we know that, Stu and I are just the storytellers, but the stories were the stories of men and women in uniform who've served all around the world and been at risk to themselves, to their lives, and at a cost to their families as well, in terms of long separations, deployments, and so forth. And we felt that the least we could do would be to try to help, and we're donating 5% of all proceeds to military charities, such as Wounded Warrior and Fisher House, etc.
The book's available at AmericaInvades.com, also available, of course, Amazon, other bookstores around the country. And you mentioned you did the book as storytellers. This is not a book of judgment. You sort of leave that up to the reader. We can read and determine whether this was a good move for the United States, a bad move for the United States, a good move for the country that we invaded. And it's really right down the middle, and we can read it and make our own judgment.
That really was our intent with the book. Our title is somewhat provocative, America Invades, but that can raise a few eyebrows. But our intent is not political or partisan in any way. I mean, we've had Democrats invade, Republicans invade. I mean, it's all been a nonpartisan process. I mean, if you think about something like Douglas MacArthur at Incheon during the Korean War. I mean, MacArthur was a conservative Republican, but his boss, Harry Truman, was a liberal Democrat. So, was that a Republican or Democratic invasion? Well, I don't think either is terribly meaningful. But it clearly was an American invasion, and an American invasion that had a lot of consequences too. For instance, the fact that many people use Samsung devices and drive Kias and Hyundais and all that might not have been possible had it not been for the invasion of Korea that was led by MacArthur and ordered by Truman.
The book is called America Invades. Christopher Kelly is the co-author of the book, along with Stuart Laycock. The book's available all across the country. Website, AmericaInvades.com. You can go to our website this weekend, America.us, and link on there as well. Let's go back to, and the book is, by the way, it's laid out alphabetically by country. So if you're particularly interested in a country, you can skip around and go get the information on that country. Let's start with the first major invasion, which is Columbia in 1741, and had some significance for George Washington.
This is, I think, surprising to a lot of your listeners and to our readers, is that American invasions begin so early, and that the first one we have is in 1741, which obviously is before America is even a country. But there were, of course, Americans living in the colonies at that time. And in 1741, there was a war between Britain and the Spanish Empire that was called the War of Jenkins' Ear. And there was an expedition led by Admiral Edmund Vernon of the Royal Navy down to what is today Colombia. And in that expedition, there were about 3,500 American colonial troops participating, one of whom happened to be Lawrence Washington, who was the older half-brother of George. The expedition wasn't successful. They assaulted Cartagena, but they were unsuccessful. But Lawrence, when he came back to Virginia, he spoke highly enough of his commanding officer that George ended up naming his home Mount Vernon in Admiral Vernon's honor. So you have a direct link between the first American invasion and our first president's home with Mount Vernon.
The book America Invades, it doesn't read like a history book. This is not a textbook. As Christopher mentioned, it's a storytelling book, and it really does an excellent job. It captures your attention. Facts that you never knew, and if you read them years ago, you've forgotten about them. And the book is an excellent read, America Invades. And it's interesting, in the early days, you think of, and I was surprised how many times we invaded Canada. But with our neighbors, Canada and Mexico, and I guess it goes back to what Thomas Jefferson, when he was trying to establish his empire of liberty, we've had a couple of incursions with both those countries, haven't we?
Yes, we have, and I think that's one of the other surprising elements that came out of the book, is that we have invaded countries that today we would consider our allies and close friends. I mean, Canada is our probably our closest country to the United States, geographically, politically, and et cetera. A member of NATO, fought 2 world wars together. I mean, Canadians are good friends of Americans. But does that mean that we haven't invaded them? No. On the contrary, we invaded them very early. I mean, we have a letter in the book that's reproduced from March 17, 1776 at the camp before Quebec, where an ancestor of mine, James Van Rensselaer, was involved in an invasion and siege of Quebec, which, of course, is in Canada. So you have invasions of Canada, and, of course, Mexico, too. I mean, that James K. Polk, President Polk, authorized the invasion of Mexico in the 1840s. We fought a Mexican-American War, and as a consequence, and that was a controversial war. There were people that supported it, people that opposed it. One of the people that opposed it was Congressman Abraham Lincoln. Another was Henry David Thoreau. But at the end of the day, the war was successful for the United States in the sense that as a result of that war, we added what became the states of California, Arizona, Nevada, New Mexico, and Utah to the Union. So we really, Polk in one administration, he was a single-term president, really transformed this country.
It's interesting in the book America Invades how you sort of capture the conflict that many Americans have gone through in fighting wars. World War II is sort of labeled as the good war and the exception. Are there any others that jump out that was sort of captured the positive attention of the American public?
Captured the positive attention of the American?
Yeah, where they really felt, yes, this is something we really need to do, and we didn't have opposition groups.
Where you had little, I mean, most wars, American wars, have had some opposition. I mean, certainly Mexican-American War did. The War of 1812 had. The Federalists opposed the War of 1812 against Britain. Most American wars, there were some that said yes and some that said no. World War II is really remarkable in the sense that after Pearl Harbor, there was virtually no opposition to prosecuting that war. I mean, it was very clear that that war needed to be fought against the Nazis and against the Japanese.
Christopher Kelly, our guest on This Week in America, our website, thisweekinamerica.us. The book is called America Invades, How We've Invaded or Been Militarily Involved with Almost Every Country on Earth. Book's available at the website, americainvades.com, along with a lot of other great information. Book is available around the country, and you can link onto our website and get direct information on that as well. Colin Powell has said that we're far from being the great Satan, we're actually the great protector. And there's so many stories as you read the book America Invades where we're really doing it, maybe overthrowing a dictator, or really doing it for the well-being of the country we're involved in.
I think that's true. I mean, Colin Powell served 2 tours of duty in Vietnam and was a experienced veteran as well as later becoming a leading military figure and also, of course, the Secretary of State for the United States as well. So, I mean, I think that he knew what he was talking about when he used the quote that you just referenced. That America has come in not as a conqueror or occupier, but more often than not, we've tried to preserve or to build liberty and democracy in countries. Sometimes with success, but obviously not always.
For so many of us, our vision of the U.S. military and our invasions and in battles, conflicts around the world, shaped by the media and by entertainment. When you got to doing the research on this, and it shows in some of the stories because it's sort of the reality is different than the media portrayal. Did you find that was common as you were reading, that this isn't really how we remember it from for a movie or a TV series?
Well, of course, lots of our quote unquote knowledge of what's has happened in our past is based upon media coverage and novels, books, films, movie treatments of things, fictional. I mean, we see The Patriot and assume that that's what happened, that type of thing, and of course there is a big difference between Hollywood presentations of what happened in Vietnam and what actually happened in Vietnam, for example. So there's a gulf between that, and we try to bridge that gulf and try to fill in the reader with the facts.
America Invades is the name of the book. A few minutes left in the program, going by way too quickly. It's an excellent read, laid out all the countries alphabetically, very easy to read, and history really jumps off the pages as you're reading those. You talk about a Swedish-American connection to our love affair with pizza. I was surprised when I read that. What's the story there?
Sure. Well, it connects to my hometown, which is Sacramento, California, and my dad went to high school with a guy named Shaky Johnson, who was at Sacramento High, and after Pearl Harbor was attacked by the Japanese, he volunteered to serve in the U.S. Navy, and his ship was sent to the Mediterranean. He called on ports in Italy, and he was a big, tall, Swedish-American guy, but he learned about Italian pizza, and he brought that back home with him to Sacramento after the war ended, and he started a restaurant called Shaky's Pizza, which was a family-style pizza restaurant in Sacramento on J Street in Sacramento, California. And that really caught on. He started a chain of them. Shakey's was later bought out. It doesn't exist anymore, but it's had many imitators, and it really was the founding for all kinds of family-style pizza operations, which are, of course, all over America today.
In most major cities in the U.S., at least once a year, the Lipizzaner stallions come to town. Actually, when we see them the next time, we should say, General Patton, thank you very much for making this possible.
That's true. Patton was a great equestrian. He was a cavalryman. He was a competitor in the Stockholm Olympics of 1912 in the pentathlon. And when he was in charge of the occupation of Austria in 1945 at the close of World War II, the Lipizzaner stallion folks came to him. Their stables in Vienna had been bombed. The horses were in distress. They were starving, and Patton ended up making the horses wards of the U.S. Army and taking them under the protective umbrella of the United States military. And so we have Patton to thank for preserving the Lipizzaner stallions, which entertain people today.
The book is America Invades, How We've Invaded or Been Militarily Involved with Almost Every Country on Earth. Co-author of the book is Christopher Kelly. The website is AmericaInvades.com. Book available all across the country. Information you can link on at our website, thisweekinamerica.us. It'd be interesting to get the input of Stuart, your co-author, who wrote the British version, All the Countries We've Invaded, actually the original, and then you worked together on this. You mentioned only 3 countries we have not had some type of military involvement with in the world. As Stuart was working with you on this project, was he surprised at the amount of military involvement we've had as a country?
I think he was. If you look head to head, we haven't invaded directly as many countries as Britain. They're about 90% and we're at 44. But in terms of military involvement, we're almost everywhere on Earth, and I think that is kind of astonishing fact that came out.
And you're working on your next book. Can you tease us a little bit with this, because this is going to be interesting as well?
Sure. We're already at work on Italy Invades, which we're hoping to come out with next fall. It's going to cover not just recent things like Mussolini, but going back to the Romans and their huge empire, and also Italian Americans. And there were 1 in 12 American GIs in World War II were actually of Italian ancestry, and so I think they have a very interesting story then, and we're looking forward to that as well.
Well, we're looking forward to having you back on the program to talk about that as well. We got a minute or so before we have to wrap up here. Let's talk personally what you went through in doing this, and you mentioned this basically is sort of part of your history as you're going back. What, as it opened your eyes to the U.S. and our role in the world, what's it meant to you personally in doing the research and writing America Invades?
Well, I think that's an interesting point. Our book, you're not going to get rich with our book. You're not going to lose 20 pounds with our book. But what our book might do is it might make you think differently about what it means to be an American. For me, researching the book and writing it I've changed my thoughts about what it means to be an American. And it might do the same for other readers as well.
Well, and in the book, America Invades, you see people like Ben Franklin, Mark Twain. Their opinions sort of change as well. It's not like we totally have to be in this particular column because circumstances are different. Circumstances change. It's interesting how things evolve as we're reading the book America Invades.
That's true. There are, I mean, Mark Twain and Franklin are examples of people who had hawkish opinions at one time and then had dovish opinions at another. I mean, we have a lot of ambivalent feelings about war in our country. We look at our national symbol of the eagle. We have the arrows in one hand and the olive branch in another. So we've had this kind of ongoing ambivalent feeling about invasions and war throughout our history.
You say Americans are always hoping for peace, but usually preparing for war, and there is so much truth in that statement. Our guest on the program, Christopher Kelly, co-author of the new book, America Invades, How We've Invaded or Been Militarily Involved with Almost Every Country on Earth. Christopher, a pleasure having you on the program. Information available at Chris's website, which is americainvades.com. Looking forward to the new version on Italy coming out, and would love to have you back on the program and talk about that as well.
Great. Look forward to it, Rick. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. You're listening to This Week in America, our website, thisweekinamerica.us.